With any finished project, you are going to have at least two ends. The end where you cast on and the end where you bound off. Leave 4 to even 8 inches if it's really slippery yarn at each end to weave it in. If you have a multicolored project, a seamed project, a project where you've used many balls of yarn, you will have even more of these ends to weave in. Weaving ends in isn't a big deal, and you can do it almost invisibly and beautifully. I'm going to demonstrate with a different colored yarn here, and I'm going to show you 3 ways to weave in with a little trick for thicker yarns at the end. My favorite way to weave in is on the back of your work to pick up the purl bumps. If you'll look at this work, I have my cast on end down here, my bind off up here. If you pull it, you will see that there are rows of the purl bumps, and each of the purl bumps, or each of the rows, has little smile purl bumps and frown purl bumps. When you start working your end in, start on a smile or a frown. I'm going to start with a smile from this advantage. I'm going to pick up the smile, then I'm going to pick up the frown that's on either side of it. Since we're starting at this end, we're going to go toward the center here. And then the next smile that's in line with the arrow, with the way my needle is going. Then after I've picked up a smile, a frown and a smile on the next row, a frown and a smile on the next row, and a frown and a smile on the next row. You want to go at least 2 or 3 centimeters or an inch minimum, and then pull your yarn through. You'll see that it's almost invisible on the back side, even though I'm using a different color yarn, and on the front it really is quite invisible. If I were using the same color yarn, it would be undetectable. Once you've woven down 1 or 2 inches or 3 to 4 centimeters, turn around and go on a new set of frowns and smiles, going up parallel to the first line. And again, I go at about the same distance. I pull that through, and because I'm paranoid about yarns coming out, I do it one more time, again turning 180 degrees, doing a U-turn, and weaving back under all those stitches, but under fresh bumps that don't have an end woven in yet. Now I pull, and then I pull everything out to make sure that it's nice and clean, and it's very difficult to tell here. On the front it's almost invisible, and when you're weaving in yarn the same color, you'll really not be able to tell. Cut the end about 1/2 inch or about 1 centimeter from the work. Once it's blocked, you can trim it further. For this next weaving in, I'm going to use basically the same method, but I'm using a sharp needle this time. You can do it with a dull needle, but if you use a sharp needle, it's a lot easier. The dull needle, you have to sort of dig around more. This is great for very slick yarns, ones that would tend to wiggle out even if you did that. Silks and stuff like that. So I'm going to go through these bumps, but I'm going to go only through a couple of them, and I'm going to go right through the middle of the yarn. I'm going to split the yarn, which is normally not what you'd like to do. Then I'm going to come and I'm going to go back just a little bit and split the end I'm weaving in, and then continue. Now it's not going to go anywhere even if it slicks out. And it's not going to slip out because you're going through the plies, turn 180 degrees, and go through the next empty smiles and frowns, and then one more time. You want to do that splitting of the plies of the end that you're weaving in close to the beginning, so that you're not restricting the elasticity of the finished yarn. Okay, now with this end I'm going to demonstrate two things: going through a thick end, or if it were in a seam, a seam, because you can hide a lot of ends in there without being seen. But also if you have a sort of a thick edge, so one of the edges. Also, I'm going to talk about what to do when you have a really thick yarn, because if I wove this in, because it's so thick, it would be much more visible. So what I do is I'm going to split the plies. I sort of untwist it a little, get my fingers in there and pull apart. And now I have two much thinner ends. I'm going to fold it over the tip of the needle, pull the needle out, and thread it. And now I'm going to just, I can either weave in like I just did, going under and under the smiles and under the frowns, and then back. Just gonna go back, and if I can't sort of maneuver because it's so short, what I can do then is pick up my smiles and my frowns. It helps if you hold your tongue just the right way. And once it's ready to thread through, then you can thread your needle. It's a little more difficult because it's a little constrained, but I can do that. And then pull it through. And I don't even need to cut that end. So I've woven it in. It's really invisible because it's thin enough to be invisible. Just, there we go. And this end I'm going to weave into the seam. I'm going to use the sharp needle for this. I'm going to weave it into this sort of thickened end, and I know that that's going to be part of the seam. So I'm just going to go right down in between all the stitches, about at least an inch or two, or at least 3 to 5 centimeters. I'm going to pull the yarn out, and then I'm going to go back in the opposite direction. I'm just going to pull that in a little bit more because we don't want that sticking out right in the corner. So I'm going to just twist it tightly so that I can go through the eye of the needle. And there it is. And we can bury that end. Everything's woven in. Once it's all blocked, anything like that that's sticking out a little, you can just trim very carefully right at the fabric. and then it'll sort of live inside the fabric and you won't have anything to worry about it, and it'll be a perfect finish. But do that after you've fully blocked your piece. Hope this helps.